Hey everybody, welcome to episode 77 of the Avocado Gamescast. Today we are going to be talking, well, mostly because of the Olympics that are still ongoing, maybe not by the time this ends, or maybe not by the time, COVID finally cancels them like it should have been. We'll be discussing some non-traditional sports games. We'll also hit up a little bit about the Steam Deck and cover a little bit about the Activision Blizzard scandal that's pretty much in full swing right now. My guests today are Bresson.
Hey, Kappa.
Hey, how are you doing? And LittleMac.
Hey, folks.
So I guess I can guess LittleMac's favorite sports game just by the name, but we'll get more into that. Want to start with what we are playing right now. Bresson, what have you been playing?
Yeah, I got a few things since Max Payne turned 20 this
Oh
week,
man.
or last week, I think even. I've been playing the first one and the second one on the PC, but what I mostly been playing is something like quite odd. It's like a DS port, DS port to the Switch. It's Impossible Untitled, so it's Layton's Mystery of Journey, Catriella and the Millionaire's Conspiracy, and then the deluxe edition for the Switch.
Wow.
Yeah, it's listed like that also in the e-store, so you get like one word in, and it's like a remastered version of the original DS game, which is based around Layton's daughter. He has disappeared since the last game, and it's just like pretty typical Layton the game. It's all about puzzles and funny writing. And I'm really bad at most of the logical puzzles, but it's good to crack your head with stuff like that.
Yeah, logic and question marks, right? Isn't that what?
Yeah, it's very cute also, but not overbearingly. One of the big things you get is like coins for our outfits to put Catriella in, and it's mostly that's just like very tweed dresses and stuff like that. It's quite adorable, but it's also extremely well written and fun. It's based in some kind of folks kind of London, and it's just very funny, a lot of fun, and
Yeah.
it's surprisingly long. I think I've done like 9 cases now, and I'm like up to like 17 hours already. I think I got like 3 more to go even.
I always loved I guess the concept of the Leighton games, but I always had to find out how to put myself almost like in a mood to play them and just accept that like half the puzzles are just gonna be like, oh, okay. You know what I mean? Like that's the kind of reaction.
That's making me feel very stupid.
Yeah.
I had one today where I needed to calculate like birth ages, so like in months. Like person A is born in that month, and person B is born in like 2 months, 2 months beyond person B. Person 3 is born 2 months after person 3, and the solution is like really easy, but it took me like 6 tries and like 5 minutes per try.
For me, with the Layton games, those logic ones come really naturally to me. I love logic puzzles, and then but the visual puzzles.
Yes.
Oh, the visuals one I'm very good at.
That's smash my brains in.
You guys need a multiplayer Layton. You need a.
It's funny because those are the ones I nail like in one try. It's like.
I was good at neither of them, so I would definitely, I would definitely get to the point sometime with them where I just kind of accept, okay, I'm probably not going to get the answer to this one, and just kind of start clicking randomly on the screen or tapping random things in my inventory, just trying to get it through sometimes. But
take a super hint and
I always felt like the game in a lot of ways though like made me think more than your average puzzle game because you had to like my brain would kind of go, okay, what's the easiest solution first? And then when that didn't work, okay, now let's start getting real weird with it. You know what I mean? And then I kind of felt like a little bit more like I was actually like thinking rather than trying to like do a puzzle, if that makes sense.
Oh yeah, for sure. That's the Switch version has like 50 extra puzzles added to it. It has like all the DC puzzles that was like in the DS version. Yeah, I bought it like in the Switch sale because it's like a full price game. But it's like one of the few games I think that's a DS port. It's really worth the full price, but they knocked it down to like 20 euros.
Wow.
Which is like an absolute steal for it. And
what are DS games like normally like 60, right?
Yeah, DS games are like the remaster version, like on for the Switch, is still doing like 40, 50,
Ooh,
something like
yeah.
that. It's a lot. And I was eyeing it for a while, but I was like, nah. I got like the original, the DS version here. But like when it was 20, I was like, yeah, fuck it.
Yeah.
It's such a fun game. I'm just gonna replay it again.
Yeah, it's
What do you
interesting. Go ahead.
what do you think of the change in cast, like the shift from Leighton and his crew to Catriel and her new crew?
I really like it. It's a good change. I think Layton got a bit boring after like 6 or 5 games. I played like 3 of them, and I really like Catriel, and I really like I forgot the boy's name, but the dog keeps calling him Pinstripe, related to his pants, like having like stripes over it and stuff. And it's like kind of funny. She's like clearly not an adult yet, and she's like always hungry, always trying to get like rich things and stuff. It's a fun departure for like from Leighton, and I think she's a really well done character and just like really funny.
Yeah, I thought they were written well, and I was disappointed at first that the game is in sort of a mini cases structure instead of
Yeah,
one big case. But then, as I played through it, and I still haven't finished it, and maybe I should go back to it because I was somewhere far into the game. But what I found as I went through it was that the mini case structure actually does wind up making you feel like you've lived with these characters for
yeah, for
longer than
sure.
you have. And
And
I thought
they
that was a clever way to kind of get them over
I
as a
think
new
the really
cast.
clever way they do is like bring back characters like all the time, like the Baker brother and the Tower Smith brother, who like appear in like every case and are like always bickering and stuff. I can't really do names because like it's a game that is completely translated in Dutch,
Mm.
so like I only got like the Dutch names in my brain at the moment. But even the cutscenes are like completely voiced in Dutch. It's
Wow.
pretty weird. Yeah, it happens like sometimes with some games. Well, Ubisoft used to do it like a lot. Stuff like Beyond Good and Evil got like a completely Dutch dub.
Mm.
It's very odd,
Yeah.
but the dub is pretty good. But I've just been too lazy to switch it to like the English dub for some reason.
I'm really interested to see if all the Layton games, like with Professor Herschel Layton, wind up taking really, really dark twists
Mhm.
Yeah.
into like parables of loss and living with trauma and moving on with your life. All
Yeah.
6 of them right near the end. And I haven't got any inkling that Catriel's story is likely to turn in that direction. And yet it
No,
seems like
no. I think
it
it's like
should. Just
clearly taimed to like a bit of a younger crowd.
yeah.
Also with the puzzles are still like the same level hard
Mhm.
for some reason, but there's also like the hint coins are a bit easier to find, and they like I found very funny how they deal like with like Layton's disappearance. It's like one cutscene in the start, and they have like 2 throwaway lines like till the 10th case or something.
This young woman is not stressing over the fact that her father died. Nobody knows where he is.
It's like a
She's
background.
rolling with it.
Oh yeah, he's still gone. Yeah.
Well, she got a talking dog now, so yeah, she got other things to worry about.
Let me ask you, so was it like a price point thing you think that kind of made it a little easier to buy? Because I don't know how this works, maybe like with Euro pricing and stuff like that, but like at least in the US, there's like an expectation for a $60 game, right? And there's an
Yeah,
expectation for a $40 game, and there's an
yeah,
expectation for a $20 game. So I think like it sounds like if at that €40 price that you're kind of expecting maybe a shorter game, you got a longer game, and you got a little bit more puzzle. So was it kind of like maybe the value felt better, you think too?
yeah, for sure. But I'm also like someone who's like very cheap
Hmm.
gaming wise. I don't really need the newest of new stuff. I mostly just play like really old stuff. So like I said before, I'm also like replaying the Max Payne's
Yeah.
and stuff like that. I barely like really play new things.
Hmm.
Only with last new things I played was like the Outer Worlds and the Tornado Pro Skater remasters. And sometimes I do pick up some indie titles at full price, but most of the times I just buy stuff from GOG or buy stuff from the Switch sales.
Sure.
Which most of the games always come for, and it's quite easy to get like a full library of stuff.
Yeah, I think the reason I ask is because I do enjoy puzzle games, but I don't think I would ever pay $60 for a puzzle game, if that makes sense, right? Like, to me, like even the best puzzle game would be somewhere in that $20 to $30, like that mid tier. But I wonder if there's like an effort to make some of these puzzle games more into like an RPG where the battle system is puzzles, over a time, and they kind of justify that higher cost that start to creep up.
Layton is also like a pretty first line Nintendo title.
Yeah.
Promote the hell out of it, and I think that's the reason why it's so expensive still to this day.
I think you could argue that Layton kind of has aspects of a visual novel.
Right,
right. Sure.
You don't make any choices.
Even the DS games.
You got a full story with.
It was like an old journey on the DS games. There's like a couple more games like that. It's like you do like mini puzzle games for like an auto novel to play, which I think is like something really cool. It's kind of comes from all this Japanese game, mostly like on all the very early CD systems. And I just think it's always a very cool style, but it never like really hit it off in the West, besides the Layton games. I'm thinking about another game, also like a police detective game for the DS, where it is also pretty much like a comic novel, but you do like some small drawing bits in it. It's very stylized, but I can't think of the name.
The maybe like the dominant form for this was maybe like the point and click adventure that maybe has some of that puzzle stuff in it. You know what I mean? But even at the time, it was less puzzle and more, what was the correct insult for insult sword fighting or things like that, and you didn't really mind going and doing it over and over again.
Because you got the funny death animation.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. But yeah, I think it's really interesting to kind of see like where puzzle games go because they've always had that little bit of a little spot for so many people. But I mean, like Professor Layton always feels like when it comes out, it's like on the verge of being like a big Nintendo release, but then never quite, hits that spot. So.
And they still sell a lot.
Yes,
a real lot. It's insane. But they're really slow burners, like always. Because this is like a remaster of like a 2014 game, I think. It was really late in the DS Lite. I think,
The one thing I remember too is I don't know if it was this one or the one that came before it, but I remember they tried to do like a weekly puzzle thing. Like you could download like a new puzzle a week?
It's in this one. All the weekly puzzles are like available. All the original DLC also. And it has like an internet connected server which adds even more puzzles. You get like no joke, you get like around 400 extra puzzles loose from the game. It's a lot.
I wish I could remember. There was an RPG where they tried something similar right around the same time, where you would download like a dungeon a week, and then you could not screen share, but DS share the dungeons that you'd found with other people, and then they would find that dungeon as well. It was a pretty, man, I want to say it was like maybe like I can't remember. We'll look it up for the link dump. But there was they've kind of dabbled in some of that. How do we keep people playing some of these types of games? I think that was Nintendo's maybe attempt around that time, Dungeons and RPGs and more puzzles and Layton. So
yeah, it's wild how online connected the DS still is, because I was like playing some stuff with my brother a while back, like Advance Wars over like the DS Switch since they got like what you were like saying, like the multiplayer infrared Bluetooth system. And it still works like a charm, even on like machines that are like 15 to 16 years old.
Yeah, and it's just the DS was such a different machine for us versus Japan. I really get that feeling where, that was such a thing to like walk by somebody, using a DS on a bus or in the street in Japan, and it's like opens up a whole different part of the game. Where in the US, that feature would have been an online feature, but they never really, developed that, I guess.
Yeah, it's a feature built for density.
Yeah.
And Japan's just got way more of that.
The one time I remember, the reason I guess I remember this one so much is because when we went to PAX, 5, 6 years ago, it was like, oh wow, this is how this thing is supposed to be. Like you were just picking up like all the little, like there's someone near you with this game on, and they would have little lounges like with these giant bean bags, and people would sit in the lounge, and there'd be like 5, 10 people all loading up the same game and downloading and sharing all the stuff, just like. And it's like it was almost like experiencing a totally different system, to be honest with you. But yeah, it was awesome to see. Um, so LittleMac, what you been playing?
Well, returning to the theme of cost versus value in a game, I've been playing Ultima 5, Warriors of Destiny,
Wow.
Oh,
the
Yeah.
classic CRPG. So very recently, a couple months ago, there was a story that I saw about the Ultima Underworld games being
hmm
delisted from GOG because Electronic Arts just wanted to take them back for whatever reason. And so GOG had put them on sale, very, very cheap. And I thought, I've heard good things about those games, and I have a new computer, as though I would need a brand new computer to run Ultima Underworld from 1990. So
Yeah.
I went to get them, and while I was there, I noticed, oh hey, the first two trilogies in the Ultima mainline series are also quite cheap, and
Yeah.
then the spin-offs to the sixth game
mhm.
are free. And so I wound up getting Ultima 1 through 6, Ultima Underworld 1 and 2, and the two Worlds of Ultima spin-offs of Ultima 6 for about $10 Canadian.
Mm.
Yeah.
And so I played through Ultima 4, and I got a good 30 hours out of that one. And that was a great time for me because as a younger person, my buddy had Ultima 6 on his PC, and we would always play through the opening battle that just happens automatically,
hmm
and then wander around and not know how to get started in this massive open world game that was nothing like the Final Fantasies and Dragon Quests we were used to playing. So when I was able to actually get into this game, Ultima 4, and play it a bunch, I gave myself the break of consulting the internet a lot.
Yeah.
And so now I'm diving into Ultima 5 and trying to do it with only the ancillary materials that actually came with the original game. So I've got the PDF of the cloth map and the original manuals, and it's been a lot of fun so far. The basic premise is that in Ultima 4, you came back to Britannia, which was founded at the end of the first trilogy,
hmm
and it's a time of peace. And the ruler of Britannia, Lord British, says, hey, things are going great, but the people need someone to look up to. So I want someone to become the Avatar by mastering all 8 of the virtues.
hmm
And so the game, a huge part of Ultima 4 is just going around being a good person.
Yeah. Yeah.
There are
Yeah.
blind shopkeepers, and when you tell them what you want, they tell you how much it costs, and then it says you pay, and they have a really bad sense of how much coins weigh. So you could order like $300 worth of reagents, give them 1 gold piece, and get them, and you can do that, except then you're never going to beat the game because you're showing dishonesty and a lack of honor and these sorts of things. So at the end of that game, you become the Avatar and you leave back to Earth because the character in Ultima is basically you dimension traveling. And then in Ultima 5, you get summoned back, and Lord British has gone missing, and now Lord Blackthorn.
Lord Blackthorn. Yeah, I remember him.
Yeah. That's
he rules
cool.
the kingdom in conjunction with his agents, the 3 Shadow Lords of hate, cowardice, and falsehood. And so now Britannia is a dictatorship that functions on ruthlessly enforcing the virtues.
hmm
So, for example, you go to the city of Minok, which is the city associated with the virtue of sacrifice, and there's a big sign that says, Lord Blackthorn's Law of Sacrifice. Thou shalt donate half thy income to charity, or thou shalt have no income. And you can go to another town, and there's a child in the stocks, and you talk to him, and you find out that his crime was his father didn't give enough to charity, and the boy didn't report his own father.
hmm
So just real, East Germany kind of stuff. It's a fascinating. It's the same world. Like the map is identical, which has been a really cool thing. Like my familiarity with Ultima 4, and its layout translates right to Ultima 5. You can find the places if you remembered them. And some of my knowledge from Ultima 4 has actually come in handy. I can give information to player characters, to non-player characters that I did not discover in this game.
Hmm.
And when I give it to them, then they're grateful and they give me information that I need in this game. So
That's
really cool in
that's
that regard.
That's interesting because I get the feeling this series was never like this was before the time of binging, right? You know what I mean? So
Yeah.
it's interesting when you're playing them back to back how that hits probably so much different because I probably played them like maybe 2 years apart. And
Yeah,
it,
that's how most they were released. Like the original trilogy was released like in a year,
mhm.
every entry for a year, and then it was like most of the time 2 to 4 years between
Yeah,
games.
and I had such an opposite experience where I was sitting there trying to like rack my brain. I'd almost like my ultimate experience was always like if I would start four, I'd get like halfway into it, and be like maybe I should replay three, and then I'd start to replay three, and I'd like maybe I should go back to the like I always kind of felt myself being drawn back because every time like a mainline one was introduced, I felt like I had to jump back almost. So that's really interesting now that you kind of put in my mind. I could probably just do these right back to back to back to back now and not have that kind of feel because I mean by the time I was playing seven, maybe eight, no eight. By the time I was playing eight, I was like, I don't remember any of this. Like having to go back a lot, and then it was the two-parter that was part seven, um,
Yeah.
and yeah, I would love maybe now to just dip back into it and just
Yeah.
hit that like curve like you're saying because yeah, that was not my experience playing it as a kid growing up.
Yeah,
Yeah.
last time I played like an ultimate game, it was like a really bizarre version.
Hmm.
Uh, Kappa and Mac, you might remember like the EA replay compilation for the PlayStation
Right?
Portable,
Yeah.
which has
Yeah.
like all the road hazards on it. It's really cool. But it also has like the Super NES port of Ultima 7, the Black Gate,
Hmm.
which is a pretty cool game, but it's like really quite different
Yeah.
compared to the original version. I played the original version also, but it's
Yeah. I
well
think.
to see. Yeah,
I think my starting point was probably six. Like my actual like at the time like brand new at the time was probably six. I was probably like 11 or 12 when they came out. Right in that wheelhouse for fantasy RPGs, and I was like, and then I started to go back from there. As I think what was 3 and 4 were on the NES, right? Is
yeah,
that how that broke down?
I
Yeah,
know that 4 was.
yeah.
I
So
believe 3 was.
and then once I got through those two, then I went back to six, and then like it was always kind of like that's like I always just kind of felt like I need to know more of this story. It's hard as hell to jump in Ultima at six. I'll tell you that because
yeah.
it's
Yeah,
like
I can confirm that. As
yeah,
I was saying, we never get you fight some gargoyles when you just load the game up, and then it was just like, well, I don't know.
yep,
Let's see now.
good game.
Yeah, Richard Garriott's thing has always been like world building. Like even their
Mhm.
online game, it was insane for the time. There was like a bug which they put in with like the animals.
Oh, Tabula Rasa,
And
right?
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, but I also meant like the Ultima Online
Oh, gotcha. Yeah.
MMORPG. Yeah, yeah. I can't remember precisely, but they input like a bug with animals, and the animals became like way too powerful and kept like killing the players because they made them like way too powerful. So they
Hmm.
needed to fix that in like 2 days.
Yeah, I mean, you can't say like Richard Gere is definitely one of those like creators.
Yeah.
If we were talking a movie, we'd be like, oh, he's such an auteur, right? Like it's like
Yes.
Yes.
but like you knew what you were getting in his types of game, and that was a good thing, at the time because it really allowed him to kind of stretch his wings and into different genres and stuff. But I always kind of felt like he wanted to tell a more complicated story that like games almost limited him. Like he's the kind of person I could see wanting to do like a tie-in movie and a comic and a game and all that
Yeah.
stuff all at once. Um,
Well, he built his own village like at his old home.
yeah,
There's like this YouTube. No. There's like this YouTube channel that went to visit it, and there's like some people still from like his old friend group who keep it up, because he doesn't live in America anymore. Like
Mhm.
the old famous house he used to live in has been sold like for a long time.
Yeah.
Like the town was still there. I think it's getting destroyed. It's still for sale. But it's like a kind of rudimentary like medieval village.
Wow.
He had his own fantasy play group there, plays, also starring him sometimes. It's wild.
You know what's crazy too? His dad was an astronaut. And like
Yeah,
now
that's
he's
right.
all into all that space stuff, obviously, like, well, now that everybody else is getting into space, I guess it doesn't seem as cool, but like I
Yeah.
think there was I think maybe there was like a rumor that he was forced out of his company because like NCSoft wanted him out when they were trying to make Tabula Rasa. And supposedly he left gaming to go like pursue, space stuff. And he started to really kind of get into the space stuff, but haven't heard much about that honestly. But man, I wish he'd get back to making some games. I think,
Yeah, but he has been like in space stuff since like insanely early.
yeah, he's not.
He was set to fly around 2000 already, but then the market broke with the .com
Mhm.
stuff, and yeah, and around Ultima Online he was also like planning to fly. I think he just fly like in 2008 already. He was like
Mhm.
really early with space tourism and stuff.
Yeah, and I think he's one of those people who I actually feel like that this guy just loves this. You know what I mean? It's like I got the money now I'm going to do something I love, which is cool. It's a little bit different than some of the feeling I get, when Jeff Bezos is going to space, which
Yeah.
is like, the ultimate like, midlife crisis, just got divorced move rather than, like, yeah, my dad does.
Especially when he didn't even like really go to space.
Yeah,
Richard
yeah.
Garriott went to the International Space
Yeah,
Station.
exactly.
And
Yeah.
I don't think Bezos even got into orbit.
No, Bezos only went to space because Richard Branson did also.
Yeah, exactly.
It's insane.
I think one of the weirdest things about it is like I don't know if Tabula Rasa ended up being like what kind of put him out of games, but it was definitely kind of felt like a square peg round hole type thing where that was the period of time everybody was looking for a wow breaker or you know what I mean, the game that would come out and be like, this is MMOs are the future. And I think he's a good fit honestly for an MMO, but then they started to put in stuff like it became like a shooter at times, and like it kind of ended up more kind of like a dystopian future RPG that never really felt like something that he would really be into, and like the story started to spin out from under, and that was I think the biggest disappointment or the biggest surprise for me was with Tabula Rasa was when the story started to spin out of Richard Garriott's control. I started to feel like,
Yeah,
oh,
for
this
sure.
game got problems if we can't, keep the story. And it kept having to be kind of like, well, here's another supplemental to the story. Here's another reboot. We need to introduce something to fix something else. And that's when I kind of got a little bit burned out on it. I only played it for maybe 2 months, which doesn't seem like a long time. Remember, this is when you're paying like I think it was like $15 a month to stick with it, and I was very into City of Heroes, right? So
Yeah.
same developers, a lot of the same community managers and stuff like that. So I was very much hoping to kind of get some of that same feel where City of Heroes might not have been the most polished game, but it was like it was made with love. That's the best way I could describe it, right? And then Tabula Rasa ended up being just so disappointing in so many ways that just never really clicked, and it was kind of kind of a bad way out for such an important person in development. But
Yeah, it's weird also because like Ultimate Online in a completely different version is still online
mhm,
and still like doing the because I played it a fair bit when Mythic was running it and it was like still on the old nearly 97 engine when I started playing it, and they were just like switching it to the new one. And it was still like a lot of fun. It just felt like an Ultima game, but then
mhm,
a bit more massive.
yeah, yeah.
To this day, I have never played an MMO except for Ultima Online.
Oh, really?
At
Wow.
the time that it came out, yeah,
You
because
know,
that game, a combination of things. I had a really outdated PC. My friends' parents were always like, yeah, we'll, you've nagged us, we'll get the latest game 2 or whatever. And we still had a Celeron,
mhm,
if you
Oh
remember the
God.
off
yes,
model, like the cheap version
I do
that
remember it.
Intel put out, and we didn't get uh, DSL internet until like a year after it was available. So I was trying to play an MMO on dial-up, while my mother started yelling at me that she used to use the phone, and then the game itself was just I was no good at it. And whenever I did settle down to play it, I would create a character and get ready and go outside of town and then just get player killed almost immediately.
Yeah.
The people playing this game were not trying to become the Avatar. They were
No,
not.
they were the anti-Avatar.
There's no commitment to the virtues in this game.
Yeah, I try to think, because like we'll get into this a little bit more, later, but like I think I've always played like maybe like the MMO of the moment. Going back to like when I was really young on BBS's, there was kind of like a proto MMO called Legend of the Red Dragon, and it was like a text-based game where very like Return to Zork feel, right? And you'd get a certain number of turns a day based on your character and your rank in the server and stuff like that. And there was other characters in there that were played by real people, and they would be sleeping in the inn, and you could check their power level and try to murder them while they slept, or things like that. It was a very, very basic text MMO, and like that really lit a fire in me. And I mean I bounced from Ultima Online to EverQuest. I tried out weird stuff like Dark Age of Camelot. I don't know if you remember that at all. Oh my God, but all the way through like the WoW and the Elder Scrolls Online. And I think I've even tried some of the like Final Fantasy 14s and stuff like that. So, but like MMOs have been a genre I've always been interested in. And around the time when Tabula Rasa started to kind of be announced or talked about and stuff, it kind of felt like a breath of fresh air in a lot of ways, and people really were kind of almost clamoring for it, which kind of became a common theme in MMOs. Everybody's always looking for the next whatever, right? Um, and I think that's kind of why it hit a little bit harder, and kind of more painful, I guess. So, speaking of MMOs, I guess we can transition into, just an absolute, shit show, awful story about, what's been going on is the Activision Blizzard scandal. We know three guys talking about games, and it's hard to kind of, put into words how bad this hurts, and to not, lean into saying like, well, it sucks that, this thing I enjoyed, I can't enjoy anymore. That's obviously not the biggest problem in this, whole thing. The problem is that these types of events happen and continue to happen. I think we're seeing a lot of the outcry being, in this case, not only did it happen, it was allowed to continue to happen at extremely high levels. And then with Blizzard in particular, their apologies have been far below what most would consider appropriate or fair or good, even so.
Well, they came out guns blazing with that first statement, just saying, "Oh, this is all a fraud. It's a sham."
Yeah.
The government didn't even really pay attention. We had answers for all their concerns, but they didn't want to hear them. It's political. And then days later, now actual executives and former executives have at least made varying levels of personal apology.
What's
at that point, you got no deniability left.
Right, exactly. I feel like
now they're pivoting.
The
very hiring a union busting firm.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, they hired the Amazon one. Yeah, right. Yeah, I got like a bit of a bank feeling with it. It's like the good old too big to fail attitude. Like, yeah, we can't go away because we're too big to fail, and like even stuff like this will want to cut us down like a company.
Yeah,
we will just like keep on going. Even the government can't stop us, and it's a very stupid idea for them, to be honest.
Yeah, because the government loves to humble. I mean, our government does a lot of things wrong, obviously, but I do always feel like there's this trend sometimes in the government to like humble businesses that kind of act like you can't touch me, right? I think there are some companies, you can't touch. You can't let Amtrak go broke, right? But every now and then, I think you get enough people and say, you know what? We don't really care about a video game company. They don't have the lobbies that a lot of the other companies do. If we shut them down, who gets hurt, right? And I think the prime example for that was, mid 90s Microsoft, right? Yeah. We're too big. You can't do anything to us. We got all this money. And then they're like, oh yeah, you're so big. You're actually a monopoly. We're going to split you in half, right? So I think that first statement, I mean, I do work, in a different world, but in a corporate environment, that first statement to me read like something that lawyers put out, right? You got to
Yeah, for
defend
sure.
you
Yeah.
got to defend yourself. You can't say
Yeah.
you're sorry, you can't apologize, but that is exactly tone deaf and wrong in so many ways, right? But not to say I get it, but that's the mentality that I think they went with that first one, is to say, this is baseless, as my client will prove, there's nothing that's ever been done. You don't take any responsibility, you don't say sorry, you don't acknowledge that you might have done anything wrong. You're fighting the lawsuit, not the public relations, right? And then afterwards, everybody said, this is awful, what are you doing? They tried to fight the public relations, but it was not only too little too late, but the stuff they were saying felt more like, oh yeah, well, I didn't see it, but maybe it happened. I don't know. We're sorry if it did. We could have done better, which doesn't address the issue that's ongoing. It doesn't address what happened even really, and it's just it's nothing. It's a big wet fart of nothing from these people who supposedly were in positions of very high power in the company.
Yeah.
Um, and like I think the backlash now is only starting to set in, and there's gonna be people who do quit WoW. And just to talk a little about my relationship, like to WoW in particular, but Blizzard in general. I was a Blizzard fanboy. I loved everything they've done, but this past 4 or 5 years has just been a torpedoing of everything that I enjoyed or loved about Blizzard, and it's made it a lot easier for me to walk away. Now I know, and I still have friends who play WoW. Like I said, I went from MMO to MMO, and I was in a very high tier, like world's first level uh, EverQuest guild, and we ran in some of the same circles as Jeff Kaplan and Alex Alfrosby. I knew them then as Fuhrer and Tiggle. So Tiggle Biddies was Jeff Kaplan's EQ name, so I guess you can tell his level of respect for women at the time.
Oh my.
Yeah. So
And general maturity
yeah,
Mhm.
and commitment to the fantasy roleplay.
and these guys were the top level guild leaders or raid leaders of EverQuest guilds at the time, and we bumped heads here and there. We knew a lot of the same people, and like me personally, my guild leader was friends with them, and we'd sometimes exchange, pleasantries slash strategies slash hate mail, depending. And as those guys worked their way up Blizzard, my guild made the move from EverQuest to World of Warcraft, and we were invited multiple times to like test end game content, like stuff that was, like AQ40 before the gates were open type stuff. So like we've interacted with them, and I've got a whole friends list of former WoW players, and we're all like, it's kind of split. I'd say half of them can't believe it, and the other half are like, yeah, of course, everybody could have saw this coming. You know what I mean? And that doesn't excuse that, like, you like to think the best sometimes of game developers, like they've grown up, or like, hey, this guy who used to be, just a ballistic maniac in guild chat or raid chat when we were trying to get stuff done. That's probably not who he is at work, right? That's his gamer persona or something. But it's starting to really show to me like how many of these people are kind of like showing you who they are in the game, and then it's bleeding into that's who they are in life. And it's
I remember MCA, the late great MCA of the Beastie Boys, talking about how they came to really, really regret the persona that they put on for the first album, License to
Mhm.
Kill.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah,
And
the persona
he talked about it.
was kind of forced on them by Russell Simmons
Mhm.
mostly
Well,
because
but they were conceiving it as a parody
Yeah.
in Fight for Your Right in that video. We're a parody of frat boy jerks.
Mhm.
And now on our album we wrote some other songs that are parodies of frat boy jerks. And now we're going on tour and we're acting like a parody of frat boy jerks. And what he wound up saying was, you play a role or you pretend to be something long enough.
Mhm.
And
Yeah.
actually that's what you are.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. And like speaking of the frat boy thing, I think there is. I mean, obviously, I was in fraternities. That's not a secret. But like, there is something different to me about how nerds become toxic towards women. It's almost worse, right? Like I can think a
Mhm.
lot of times at my fraternity, there was a lot of times where it's like, hey, actually, be nice to the women that are coming over. Don't treat them like assholes because they're gonna stop coming over, right? And so many more of the interactions were face to face, right? And you'd get slapped or a drink thrown in your face if you were a jerk. I feel like the level of anonymity on the internet and just the general state of gaming's for us, not for you. You're not welcome here, is a different type of asshole behavior, if that makes sense.
And the seething resentment of people who don't even towards women from people who don't socialize with women
Mm-hmm.
but feel that they should be entitled to have women
Yes, yeah.
of a standard that they want of, that looks like a video game heroine or a movie star
Mm-hmm.
should be seeking me out and finding me and just recognizing that I'm a nice guy.
Yep.
Even though I never do anything nice or say anything nice.
And I think what's tough right now is, I will say that, I mean, even at my high level, world's, first type guild in WoW, we had tons and tons and tons of women in our guild. WoW is a very popular game for women, and it always has been. It's been a chance, lose yourself in the world and stuff like that. And I mean, I would say that even as a guild, we were pretty welcoming of them because we knew this is going to sound bad, but they had a different mindset sometimes in the game than the men did. Like we would be like, hey, let's get our top gear level. Let's do this. Let's, push this content. And sometimes we would have a lot of women who in our guild who would say, well, how do we make this happen? They're almost more like the strategic planners to the men's tactical planners. And it worked really well for us. We always loved to get, new recruits, and it was always helpful if we had a couple women who would think about how to take care of fights in like a bigger sense. And I wonder now, with a game that was so friendly or so welcoming to women in a lot of ways, more the community sometimes than the game itself, I wonder what's going on in their minds, right? It's got to be a lot tougher for a game that you love, that you felt like was a second home almost, and you've got all these friends and this is your social outlet, and now you're finding out it's being made by the worst of people, So I would love to kind of hear some of those stories because I can think of, 10, 15, women I played WoW with, and it was that they loved it. They would spend all day farming herbs for a potion that would make us, 5% less likely to die in a fight. And it was that kind of, mentality, what we could do for like the good of everybody. And it was such like a selfless like way to play that I still think like that that's the kind of people you want in your game. They're good people. And it's gotta be hard to decide, where do I go from here, on a personal level. Everybody's going to do their own thing. It's like when a lot of directors or producers or anybody else gets Me Too'd, you've got to make your decision, right? What's your line, right? I uninstalled the Blizzard launcher, which wasn't hard for me to do, honestly. I really haven't been playing much on there besides StarCraft co-op. But it was easy for me to drop that out of my rotation of stuff I play. Um, and it's everybody's going to have to make that decision, I guess, of what supporting or not supporting Blizzard, I guess, looks like for them.
Absolutely. It's
So,
easy for me to say, I play maybe a little bit of Diablo every decade. It's easy
yeah.
for me to say, you know what, I'm done with Blizzard.
Yeah.
They shape, whereas if it came out that, say, Nintendo was a horrific, toxic environment for women, that's going to put me in a serious dilemma where I need to actually make big life changes.
Yeah.
I have a bit like the same with Kappa, but I came into I played World of Warcraft for a while, but never like really serious.
Mm-hmm.
Loads of friends of mine were playing, so I played it on and off for like 5 years. But like the big Blizzard game for me was like Overwatch. I played a lot of Overwatch.
Yeah.
And yeah, man, I wasn't playing at the moment, but I sometimes still pick it up. And yeah, it's just gonna be now out of my rotation.
Yeah, and it's
gonna suck a bit, but yeah, for the rest, yeah, it's by far the better thing to do than still actively using it for me personally.
And it's probably the worst part. And like I said, it's probably worse for people who are active WoW players, and definitely worse for active WoW players that are women. But Blizzard's been slowly, I think I want to say 2 years ago, I said it was hard to watch all these studios that I used to love just slowly self-detonating, right? I mean, it was Bethesda, it was BioWare, and it was Blizzard. I call them the three Bs, right? And to kind of see, at least Bethesda got bought by Microsoft. I think that fixes one of their big problems, which was money, right? I always felt like Bethesda was operating on a budget that didn't support their ambition, right? That's an easy problem to fix. You get bought by Microsoft, now you get to make whatever the hell you want, right? BioWare, I think they were making a lot of bad studio decisions under EA, and I know people blamed EA. I think Anthem was BioWare's baby, and man, did they fuck that one up. Blizzard, though, at the time I was mostly just mad at Blizzard because they were making bad games and bad decisions. But now seeing this in the background, like, yeah, this is way more appropriate to be, mad about and canceling them, if you want to say that, or just not playing their games anymore. I don't think it's a cancel situation because it's just, no, you can't. If you do shit like this, there's, there's going to be a backlash. There should be a backlash, and this is what you get for it. Seeing stuff like that Cosby, have you guys seen the Cosby suite tweets?
Yeah, I read about it. It's
Like,
god awful.
yeah, like things like that are just, if that hits the light of day, people aren't going to be happy, and they just didn't give a shit because they thought people are going to still play our game, so who cares? And I think now that there's a comeuppance, I mean, good. That's what deserves to happen. Activision Blizzard has been a mistake from the top down, and I mean, I really am thankful that Bungie bought their way out of that deal, because I am a huge Destiny fan, and I do feel like, I know Bungie says, yeah, we have problems in the studio, but we don't want to be seen in this kind of light. Getting out from underneath something that was just this bad and probably even worse inside, I think is a smart move. So I don't know. I don't know if Activision Blizzard spins themselves out so that Call of Duty isn't getting the backlash that WoW is, but it's a sad death from a great studio. I mean, my first Blizzard game was Warcraft, Orcs and Humans, and it came with like a ton of little doodads like games used to back then, and there was a number on it. It was like, stuck, call us. And I can remember calling that number and literally talking to Mike Morhaime, you know? And he's like, oh, what stage are you stuck on? I'm like, oh, I'm in this dungeon and these spiders keep attacking me. And he's like, oh yeah, hey, try to have your footmen up front and your wizards behind and stuff like that. I was like, oh, okay, But to go from that, right, to this is just, I mean, what a shitty sad end to something that was like, Blizzard could do no wrong for so long. I know it doesn't feel like that now, but I mean, it was like they were canceling games that didn't meet their standards, and like they were held up as, this is the studio that releases a finished product when it's ready, and they don't miss, they don't fail. Everything that comes out is just, and now it's like, I mean, I don't know. I'd probably consider EA above them. You know what I mean? And that's unimaginable a year or two ago.
Game wise, like their last 3 games were like remasters, right?
Yeah, and not even good remasters, right? Like,
no, god awful ones.
I enjoyed CNC remaster, and I hated Warcraft 3 remaster. That's crazy, like.
Yeah.
So, rip Blizzard, I guess.
Still don't get like the CNCs needed to remaster because like the compilation EA released.
Oh yeah, the 10-year. Yeah, 10-year anniversary.
It was it's still in organs, and it's a really good compilation also. But yeah.
So moving on a little bit more to some hardware news. Steam Deck. It's new handheld. Valve's getting back into the hardware business. You can pre-order, and I don't know. That's what I'll say.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Nobody knows.
I've seen stuff flying around like, oh, this is as powerful as a PS5, Xbox One. There's no way. There's absolutely no way.
Oh my goodness! Don't leave it on your lap while you're playing.
Yeah, I think it's light on fire. Yeah.
Burn your thighs. Yeah.
I don't think this to me is a weird step, right? Because where I see the future of gaming going isn't necessarily handheld versus console versus whatever. I see it going to streaming, right? And I just
cloud gaming.
Yeah. And I wonder how you're going to be able to convince somebody to buy a $500 streaming device that, let's leave the Switch out of it for a second, that's going to run some games but poorly, depending on if they have, and you're going to have to really fuck around with, Linux and Windows and stuff like that. And, you're going to be doing sideload. It's a lot to ask for someone to play some Steam games okay. Right?
Yeah, I found it very weird that it's gonna run on Linux, because I've used Ubuntu like for the last 8 years, kind of on and off, and Steam on Ubuntu works fine, but it also is very limited. And what you can play, it's most GOG games you can play on Linux these days, but Steam is still pretty much a shit suit. Like most indie games you can play, but most major titles, even you can play them loose from another source, still not on Steam.
Yeah, and I think the reason is, Valve and Gabe have had a crusade now against Microsoft being the platform for gaming for some reason. And I mean, I'm sure there's lots of behind the scenes and stuff. It feels weird to me though, because it's like fighting a battle that no one in the world would tell you to fight. It's,
Yeah.
when you look at a Steam survey, like the hardware survey, I mean, Windows is 80, 85%.
Yeah.
Yeah, and then the other 10% is Mac, and then you got 5% that you might as well try to do this thing with a Mac OS. It's so weird to me. That's kind of like where the hill they're going to die on. And then I think when you compare it to the Switch, it falls short in that Switch has exclusive games and they're unique games and they're games people want to play over and over again, and they want to play the new versions of those games, right? So
Yeah.
I don't I don't see that in a lot of, let's say Steam indies start out with them, right? Yes, they're popular, yes, they come out, but there's a new one every other month, right? So
Yeah, but the problem with Steam Indies, the Switch stick took like a major bite out of them
yes,
also.
yeah,
Because
Yeah,
like the Switch is like the system for me because I'm like a cheap ass gamer and most of the indies release on there and
yep,
most of them get discounted pretty fast.
yeah,
yes.
that's the first thing that occurred to me when I heard about the Steam Deck, sorry, is that I just thought, well, my Switch is already performing what the function of a Steam Deck
Yeah.
would be for me, because
Hmm.
I'm probably not going to play any AAA PC releases.
Oh no.
Every game that I see that I want to play that's announced for PC, I say, sweet, I'm looking forward to playing that 1 year after it's released for the Switch.
And then as somebody who's well into the Microsoft ecosystem, what I see is, well, I can stream this for free, more or less. When this thing hits Game Pass, I can stream it to an $80 tablet I got for free when I renewed my Verizon contract, or I can stream it from my
Or to
phone.
your shield box or
Yeah,
something like that.
yeah,
It's like so easy.
yeah. It's once you've messed with that xCloud, it's a game changer. I can stream it to anything. I can go grab my 10-year-old Chromebook that's sitting in a closet somewhere, plug it in, and I'm playing Halo. Um, it's so weird that this Steam Deck to me exists in a space this between what Microsoft's doing, between what Nintendo's doing, Sony. I don't know. I don't know if they're gonna have a new Vita or something, but between what those two companies are doing, and then they kind of took their own stance. Now there's enough goodwill out there for Steam that this thing's gonna sell out and it's gonna look real popular, right? But I just don't know what gaming gap it fills for me that my desktop or a good laptop or would otherwise let me play, right? Like, am I gonna play Civ 6 on this thing? Hell no, right? Like, it's just weird to me that
It is going to give PC gamers the opportunity to experience the agony of console players trying to read the fonts.
yeah,
Oh yeah.
Console.
yeah, the UI scaling, right?
Yeah, because I'm looking here
Switch
at
is the
Merv's
worst
notes.
idiots.
Hmm.
Yeah, will devs prioritize making games feel good, look good on handheld? Bigger
No.
UI, for example? It's like, no, they won't.
No, they
It's gonna
absolutely
be
won't.
horrible.
Yeah,
The
they're gonna.
font is going to be so small, it's going to have to come with a Steam magnifying glass.
And
I think the Switch is even worse in dock mode. My TV is like I think 5 meters removed from my couch, which is like a sensible distance, but for gaming not because it turns all the subs like too tiny. And if I'm removed like 2 meters at most, I can read them. And my eyes are pretty good. It's
I
absolutely
remember
the worst thing about console gaming.
I remember trying to play This War of Mine on PS4 when it was one of the PlayStation Plus releases, and I had to go and kneel like I was a child playing a NES on a tiny TV next to my very large high definition TV so that I could see the fonts.
yeah,
Yeah.
that game is so dark too. Oh
There
man.
were icons and things that I couldn't even make them out.
Yeah, I wonder. I'm not saying Nintendo would do this, but this to me says, man, there might be a market for the Switch Pro that was kind of rumored, right? And then, if you open yourself up to a little bit more of a Steam Marketplace type indie shop, I mean, Nintendo could end this war real quick, right? I mean, because that's, uh, I don't know. I think that there's going to be people who are going to enjoy this, and some of the stuff though I've seen floating around, like technical specs and what people are expecting, resolution and graphics. I just don't see it happening. Honestly, I don't see this thing blowing in any doors. It's gonna run a million degrees too. I don't know. I think that when they showed it docked and everything, I'm like, this makes no sense. This is not for me. It's like a bad laptop for $500 or an okay handheld that only is going to play a certain games. I think if they'd have went with some type of Windows, at least maybe you could say, well, you can also, do your work emails, or like there's some productivity stuff to be gained, or just Windows in general has a lot more, out the box ready to go that I think the average person is going to use. That I don't know why sticking with Linux was such an important thing with them, other than, like I said, their little war with Microsoft, that you would lose a lot of what could be functionality, instead to go with, well, now you have to do inside load and all this other stuff that I don't think the average person's going to want to mess with. So, Steam Deck, uh, negative reviews. I'm just going to type that down.
It's a thing.
Yeah.
My reaction.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, never say never, but I would bet against the Steam Deck as a game changer.
Same, and if they go 0 for 2 in hardware, well, I guess 0 for 3 if you really consider the Steam controller and then the Steam machines as their own thing. I think this is it for Valve when it comes to hardware stuff. Besides, maybe they're getting into a little bit more VR, but it seems like Valve doesn't have projects as much as they have, I don't know, like dalliances almost. Like, hey, we're gonna dabble in VR. We're gonna make a VR game that's gonna be, people are gonna sweat for it because it's Half-Life, and then we're not really gonna do much with it, for a while, and then hopefully we sold enough install base or whatever, and now people are out there flocking to, I don't know, what's the hot new VR game? If you can name one, I'll be shocked. But, so I don't know. And I feel like they tried to do this thing with the controller that was like, oh, we got this, crazy controller thing that doesn't really work good. And everybody who plays, with the controller on PC is like, but the Xbox controller is fantastic. It's kind of trying to find a problem where there isn't one in a lot of ways. And it's like, speaking of, studios that it hurts to see the path they're going down. Valve's almost a victim of the success of Steam when it comes to like them, in my mind, as what they've been as a company. Because fighting this dumb war with Microsoft isn't something your average studio is going to do, right? They're going to work on making a new game or stuff to bring people back in, but I don't know. I mean,
they basically have enough dedicated revenue coming in from Steam that they never have to try to do anything to succeed.
Yeah,
and they can just do whatever comes to their mind, as opposed to having to be like, well, we better make Half-Life 3 because people are going to buy that, and that'll be a good infusion of capital for our next passion project.
Yeah, right. There's no passion, so there's no project. Right?
We'll do a passion project if it comes up.
Yeah.
But our passions are weird.
Yeah.
Continual efforts to bust into hardware or VR.
Or our passion is hats. How many hats can we make in Team Fortress 2 this year?
Yeah.
It's weird. I mean, and like Valve's kind of in that other, like, disappointing for other reasons, obviously, than Blizzard. But the disappointment I'm getting more from Valve is that, like, it's a studio that used to mean something, used to do stuff, and now it's just kind of like a money making revenue. And I'm well on the record now of having competition for Steam is a good thing. And my Epic and my Origin and my Game Pass kind of prove that at this point, right? Like, I'm much more comfortable opening a second or third or fourth, game store, seeing what the deals are and making my decision then, rather than feeling like everything has to be on Steam, And I imagine other people are getting there too, right? People hate on Epic. Well, hey man, if they're giving me, a free game every week, and they're good games sometimes, whatever, I'll download it. I'll click here and get it. And then in the meantime, I've been seeing the Steam sales used to be, a race home from work or school to, jump on those 90% off deals and get all excited. And how much money did you blow on a Steam sale? Now, I mean, I'm like, oh, cool, 50% off for Magica too.
My buddy used to buy so many games in Steam sales, and he wasn't even a PC gamer.
Yeah.
I don't know if I ever remember him playing a PC game except for Binding of Isaac and FTL. But he would buy like 50 games, and he'd be like, I'm making money over here because these games cost like 20 cents. And I'd be like, but like you could throw the 20 cents out the window.
Yeah.
And it'd be the same impact. But yeah, that was a hot thing for a while.
Yeah.
My Steam library from like the good years of Humble Bundle and Steam sales is like up to 500, 600 games or something. It's a lot.
Yeah, it's just interesting because like my mind now has kind of gone from like, well, what's going to come up next on Game Pass, or what is Epic going to throw me for free more than a Steam sale, right?
Yeah.
So anyway, let's get into our topic. We got the Olympics raging, so sports are on our mind. But let's talk a little bit about non-traditional sports because that's what the Olympics tends to emphasize, right? I watched a lot of hammer toss last night, and man, I love some hammer toss, right? And I watched. I forgot this thing even existed. I thought it was just for horses, to be honest with you. Steeplechase. And I was watching them run
Yeah.
around, and they jumped over the little thing, and then they jumped over
Yep.
another one, and there was water, and I was like, "Oh my God, there's water!" So, but that's the kind of stuff that I had me thinking about, non-traditional sports. So you've got games that break outside of that, football, basketball, baseball, just the regular old sports games, and maybe put a twist or a spin on a sports, a type of sport, or they do like a totally fictional sport and get it into you. So I've got a few favorites, but first I want to hear yours.
Yeah.
Bresson, you want to go first?
Yeah, I want to go first. Yeah, my first idea, I'm not like really big into football in the European way and in the American way, but I absolutely love football managers, which are such odd games to think of. They're like the most statistic numbers games ever, and the only thing you like doing is like managing a bunch of text most of the time. Some of them do have some cutscenes or simulating it. But most of the time, it's just like watching numbers, make sure your players are healthy, make sure your finances are healthy, and stuff like that.
Now, one of the most interesting things to me about this game and this series is people have gotten real life jobs with football/soccer teams because of their football manager performance or spreadsheets or that is amazing to me. I mean,
it's pretty common because it really works like real life management if you really go hard into it. And these games have been made by the pretty much the same company and guys since the 80s, like the mainline football manager. And they're like so giant database filled and stuff, and you can play it really casually like I do most of the time, or you can go really deep into it where you're like managing nanoseconds and stuff like that. But like also with the upcoming esports, also some clubs also started including football manager players, and it's really weird. It's also really cool to see.
I think it's very very cool. The American equivalent I think was Madden for years and years.
Yeah.
Madden does a lot wrong and a lot right, but one of the things that everybody I think agrees across the board, they do a great job about rating and assessing players like down to like individual statistics like throw accuracy or run blocking power, things like that. So similar to Football Manager, someone took a step back one year and said, "Hey, rather than like playing the game as a player, what if we made a game as a coach?" And you basically just say, well, here's the play I want to run, and I want to draft this guy, and I want to do all this, but then the game plays itself. They tried it one year, and it was a huge, like, disaster. However, my dad plays it, like, maybe every day. Like, it is maybe his favorite game, and I love how, like, Football Manager took something that was so, like, small, like, definitely, like, down to, like, who knows how many people are going to be into this, and it built it just through, like, force of will, basically, made its own way into it, and I always see it on sale, and I always think it's cool. I know nothing about football/soccer, but
I also played like a fair bit of Hockey Manager, which is also pretty good. It's from a different company, and it's a bit more streamlined. Yeah, but it's like games I pick up like not every year, but every few years I pick up one, and I play it like for a month, then lay it away, and then I pick it up for like a couple weeks again. It's just like a lot of fun.
yeah, and I mean, like it's that type of like spreadsheet management sim, that I wonder, like this is like you getting down some Ender's Game type stuff, where you're like, what if we did this with a little bit of a war game or something, but it's really 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 cool. I've always been intrigued by Football Manager, but I'd love to just see, like, I think any kind of game where it has like a real world impact to me is just one of the most interesting things you can really pay attention to, where people are getting jobs off of their success at, you know, stuff like this.
Yeah.
What's one for you, Little Mac?
So for me, the kind of non-traditional sports games that I loved, besides the obvious Mario sports ones that you might expect from a Nintendo person like me, has always been track and field type games. Both, actual, these are the Olympics and you're going to play
Yeah.
the Olympic sports, Lillehammer 94 or whatever. But then even more than that, the wackier kinds, your caveman games, the Kuriokan, Crash and the Boys, it was called when they brought it here. A series of events, and you're managing a team, and you're playing through all these little sort of more developed than a mini game, much less developed than a full game events, and trying to accumulate an overall score. All those games, that's a genre that really, really appeals to me, which makes it kind of shocking to me now that I think about it, that I still have never tried the Mario and Sonic at the Olympic Games
Yeah.
game. That might be an obvious gap in my playography that I need to
I mean,
address there.
the launch of that game was monumental. I mean, it was, Mario and Sonic in the same game. I remember that was a huge thing. But yeah, I love those types of games too, where it's kind of just, it's more like a how fun can we make this thing that's already fun? It's like layering the fun. But yeah, I totally agree.
I remember Caveman Games has events like, well, it has just you're standing on a big rock platform, kind of like American Gladiators, and fighting each other with clubs. And then it has like Tyrannosaurus racing. So
Yeah, yeah.
you gotta get that Tyrannosaurus to ride you along, but you can get thrown from it, and when you get thrown from it, it might eat you. And there was a fire starting game that I could never understand when I was a kid, and yet now as an adult, every time I need to get a fire going,
You think of it?
I just the blowing on the fire part. I'm always thinking of caveman games when I'm sucking in a breath and then trying to
Yeah,
get those embers to.
because those mini games would have been fun if you set it in modern day times, just have them as goofy, like Mario Party type games. But having a little bit of a theme on it, I think helped a lot. Caveman games definitely sticks in my mind. It's like, yeah, it was always fun to have a friend over and throw it on there and try to blow on the fire, or what did you do with the T-Rex? Like you put something in front of his face, like meat or something, right?
Yes.
Yeah, yeah. So it's always fun to have friends over and be like, you're just doing those kind of goofy things. There was a little bit of a caveman renaissance around that time. That was like during the bonk days, wasn't it? Maybe.
Bonk, Joe and Mac,
Yeah.
the lesser prehistoric man game
Yeah,
for Super Nintendo
yeah.
that you play
Adventure
on
Island.
Iceland.
Yeah.
beating all the bonk games and all the Joe and Macs. I guess you play some prehistoric man.
So yeah, one of mine that I wanted to mention, because this one has such a weird tie in my own brain for sports, is I used to go to the YMCA as a kid a lot, and they had kind of like a entry lobby where they had a couple snack machines, a couple of drink machines, and 3 video games. And the one that I played the most was Super Dodgeball. They try to kind of keep it sports themed, I feel like, at the YMCA, so they had Super Dodgeball. Super Dodgeball was not a very accurate game when it comes to
No.
what it depicted dodgeball being, but I could always remember, like the weird sensation of like I really didn't get how the game worked sometimes, but sometimes I just demolish another team. I had no idea why, and sometimes I'd die in the first team. But working your way up quarter by quarter to defeating, the evil Russian team, it was a fun way to play. And I remember like one of the coolest things about it. I guess I don't know if this was in the home version as well, but the music changed a lot, and I know that was kind of one of those things like at the time where like there would be stage music, but I always felt like at least when I remember playing it that it was like the music would speed up as the game would get more intense, and that was one of the things I remembered with it. Maybe it even didn't do that; it was just on my own like memory, but.
I can't remember. I'll just I'll have to check it out. I've got that Kunio-kun collection.
Yeah, it could have been just like a really bad arcade cabinet that we had. It just couldn't handle playing the music. But I would always it was a weird game where I would feel like the intensity ramp up as I played. Kind of like similar to like that feeling in Tetris, where like, I'm going here, and whenever you would see the other team come out, you'd see, they'd had, I don't know what you call them, but there was definitely some bigger guys out there, and like there was the little fast guys and there was the big guys, and I would always kind of like try to look at the team and like what was my strategy here with this big old team from like China, where they're all gigantic and I have to spike it really hard and stuff. But that was such a good memory because like I would always get out of the pool. My mom would give me a handful of quarters while she was getting ready or whatever, and I just go sit there and play super dodgeball until I ran out of quarters.
I know me and my friends would the corner store had a copy of the NES version. We would very frequently, and actually after going to the pool in our neighborhood,
Yeah.
go down there, rent that game, play a ton of it. I was always disappointed after playing it by real life dodgeball.
Yeah, yeah, exactly.
Not just because it's like, I can't do a super shot. Like I can barely throw this hard. But on top of that, I love the kind of formalized sport dodgeball rules where you got 3 like infield guys and they're the ones who you're actually targeting, but then everyone also has the outside the limits on the other side, so you can like pass to your teammates who are behind your opponents.
And it was never really a version of dodgeball that I was familiar with. It felt like a whole different thing, obviously. It's almost like volleyball in some ways, or like I don't even know how to describe it, but
yeah, it's got a sort of volleyball or tennis ball, like with no net, but
yeah.
Court setup. And obviously, in real life, you can't play a game where you win by literally beating your opponents unconscious with the volleyball.
Yeah.
But that you're throwing, but you could come up with you get 4 hits in your row or something. And you could play this in gym class if your teacher was willing to really put the work in to study the original game and convert it.
Yeah, I mean, and it's still one of those weird games that just sticks in your mind, like the music and the gameplay and stuff, but it definitely was its own thing. I've never played a game of dodgeball that was anything like Super Dodgeball as a kid, so, but
I
yeah.
think I probably tried to get some going, but yeah. And a thing that I really, a funny thing, if you play the rest of the series of Kuriokan type sports games, because Super Dodgeball is the earliest one, I think. Actually, the soccer one might be first. Might not. But anyway, it's very close to the start. And when the later ones start developing a storyline, it remains the case that Kunio is the captain of the Neketsu High dodgeball team. So the story of the hockey game is that the Neketsu hockey team is so pitiful that they come to the dodgeball team. They're like, "Would you guys just play hockey? Like, show us how to be good at sports?" And the dodgeball players have to join the hockey team.
Yeah.
Their core sport is dodgeball, and they branch out into all these other sports from there.
I'm looking at some of these names right now. In America, it was always like Super Dodgeball too. You know what I mean? But like, one of the original was called Fearsome Foe, Tale of the Dodge Soldier. The other one was
the
what?
Yeah.
titles of Neketsu games are so great.
Another one is it's Mr. Kunio's Dodgeball. Gather everyone.
Go Neketsu Hockey Club, Slip and Slide Madness.
This just reminds me of watching Crotendo and him endlessly like he's going through all the Famicom backlog and like endlessly naming all those homeball games, which also have like titles that run in the 3 sentences. It's weird.
The game's announcer and referee is Angela. She's the daughter of DB Mao, who wants to prevent her father from destroying the sport of dodgeball. Like, there's definitely some stuff going on here that I never picked up on. And the reboot was called Kunio's Hot-Blooded Dodgeball Legend.
Yeah, I believe Neketsu is actually just the word just means hot-blooded. So the students go to
Hot Blood High.
Like, that is a serious high school. That produces the toughest Japanese student street gangs in the city.
This just sounds like Rock and Roll High School.
Yeah, it's the Japanese
it's such
version.
A wonderful series. I love those games. I mean, I loved them when I was a child. I love them now. And I always kind of wish there was an anime series.
Yeah.
I see here on Wikipedia there's a manga.
Man,
I don't.
I want to go to more hot-blooded high, please. So
Yeah, keep them coming.
yeah. So what's another one you got, Little Mac?
What's another one? Ever hear of the Aquatic Games for Super Nintendo?
No.
It's a spin-off
No.
of the also little-known James Pond series, which I've never played.
Oh, I know James.
Yeah,
Pond,
I know
of
James
course.
Pond.
Yeah, so James Pond has this spin-off that is also it's a track and field themed game where different aquatic creatures compete in water sports against each other.
Doesn't it star like the penguins from James Bond mostly?
I think so. It's been so long. Like I don't have a bunch to say about it. Just that when I try to think of what are the wacky track and field games I loved, there was a Peanuts one for NES.
Yeah.
Snoopy Games or something.
Yep. Snoopy was wildly popular right around the time NES was, so that makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
Peanuts were like the original Minions. They were
Yeah.
merchandise that.
Stick them anywhere.
Insane.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Anyway, it's a genre I would love to see more of, which then makes it even sillier that I'm not voting with my wallet and buying these Mario and Sonic at the Olympic Games. So maybe I need to.
Yeah, you could be the change. Yeah.
Yeah, I still got another one, which is also like a really weird one. Rockstar Table Tennis.
Wow. Yeah.
Which is like a blast for best for you, Kappa, I guess. It was like an Xbox 360 launch title. I bought it like a while back, secondhand, and it's a lot of fun. It's a really weird game to play also. It's very arcadey, but it's also kind of deep cutting. It's mostly like kind of tech demo in some kinds.
And it's a realist take on
it's very
sport, right?
realistic.
Like it's a sim. It's not. It's not of a piece with other Rockstar games. It's not some edgy table.
It's very cut and dry. It's bizarre. Like the cover is just like pretty clear, and there's like table tennis bats on it, and that's the only thing.
Yeah, table tennis. Speaking of, I think you were going to mention it. I really think that table tennis is one of those weird. Well, Mario Tennis, any kind of tennis game lends itself so well to video games. It's starting to see more and more of those pop up. It's kind of interesting. But I always feel like the first test for it is we're going to try some weird motion control with it, and then we'll go from there, right?
Well, it kind of depends. You had like the series of Topspin, which is like a bunch of really great tennis games, mostly for the Xbox 360, and the original Xbox, and also for PlayStation 3. But I think those were mostly popular in Europe and over here, and then in the United States.
Yeah, and then I remember what was the name of that Nintendo console? The red one that burned your brains if you played it for too long.
Boy.
Yeah,
Virtual Boy.
Yeah, it had the original Mario Tennis, right?
Yes, yeah, and that's what I remember the most about that one was I played the tennis as like a demo. They used to have it as like you played in like Sears or whatever, and they'd have it like glued to the counter or whatever. And I was like, this thing is awesome, but this is gonna kill my eyes. I could already tell. So
have fun antidote. I was watching Runaway Bride last week, and that's a movie from 1999, and it has like a character playing a Virtual Boy, which has been off the market then for like 2-3 years. It's really bizarre to see.
That might be the only person in the world who is still playing the Virtual Boy at that time. this fictional character.
Yeah, I've tried to think about Virtual Boy. It's got to been out for what? I mean, like I wonder if it's hitting that collector's status for it yet, or if people don't even mess with it because it's still so,
It's kind of did. There's like some YouTube guys are covering all the games. There's like some pretty interesting games for it. There's like a Persona one, and there's some other stuff for it. And there's also, of course, the original Wario Land and stuff. There's some pretty great games for it. I played it a bunch of them on my friend's one, but it's like after 10 minutes you're done. Like literally burning.
I've always wanted to play that Mario Clash game, which looked really neat to me at the time, but I only ever played a Virtual Boy in a store display, and only ever had the tennis game. I
Yeah,
think there's a Wario game. Like there are games
the
there
original
that
Wario Land is for
I would
the
like to
Virtual
see
Boy.
Nintendo do something to liberate those games from the Virtual Boy.
I
Maybe make them grayscale
I
and put
think
them on the
they
Switch.
tried to do a collection for it, but like porting for it was hell. I can't recall,
Yeah.
but it's like somebody at least tried to port them around 2010.
Yeah, I just always wonder when it comes to like, comfort, right? Like even VR is very uncomfortable to me, to be honest with you. So I just always
Yeah.
kind of wonder what's the longest amount you could really strap something to your eyes and go with it. And it's everybody's gonna have a different time, right? But man, like it seems like there was a lot of cool ideas that came out there with Virtual Boy as far as like, hey, mess with the depth and field and all that kind of stuff. But yeah, I don't know. I don't know if there's ever going to try that again, really.
Mm.
Yeah.
So you got another one, Bresson? I got a couple more if you don't.
Yeah, I got one. I'm not like I said before, not a big football fan, but I really like the FIFA Street games. They're like
Yeah.
4-on-4, very arcadey games, like with super moves and stuff.
Mhm.
And there's like mostly for to play the first 3 ones, and they like strip everything about FIFA I don't like. It's like 3 buttons: you can kick, you can pass, and you can block, and that's all.
Yeah, we had the American version of that. Obviously, we had NFL Blitz and NBA Jam,
Yeah.
kind of the same idea of let's just really ramp up the fun of this. You know what I mean? And like
Yeah.
not really do too much else with it. But
Yeah,
yeah.
I played a lot of Jam also, but Blitz never made it over here for like offices
Mhm.
releases. And also like speaking of EA games, I also had like Fight Night Champion, which is the last of the EA boxing games, which is extremely realistic and bloody, and one of the most weirdest and like realistic games I ever played in boxing. It legit like sometimes creeped me out with how much blood it spills. It's completely bizarre, and it's like one of their most critical acclaimed games ever. Like no joke, it's like universal praise, and it was like the last one they ever released. It's extremely bizarre but really cool game.
Yeah, I've always to even put a further twist on it, we had a little game called Mutant League Football, right? Which was kind of right.
Oh God, yeah,
So
yeah.
you take the crazy like hey, things are gonna explode and get real crazy, and you put it on top of a level of football, but also you've got skeletons and goblins and all kinds of crazy stuff like that. Mutant League Football is probably my example of like how crazy can you really get with and I think it was kind of born out of necessity, right? The NFL is very, very, very tight with their licensing, right? So Mutant League Football probably plays it as close as you can, by having characters that are obviously based on, real players, like
Parody names.
yeah, exactly. So it's like, hey, no, that's not Tom Brady, that's Bomb Shady, I think that's actually his name. So, and his special ability is to throw bombs on the field, and if you try to get next to him, you blow yourself up. So yeah, they have a lot of that like going on in the game itself, right? And then like what you said though, it's like a very basic football game. Otherwise, it's 4 buttons and it's blow each other up and do all kinds of funny stuff. And I always loved like just play with like the actual like guts of the sport and then get as crazy as you want after that, right? The NBA Jam, another great example, right? Shoot, pass, block. I think that's all the buttons you had, but yeah.
Strip it right down, 2-on-2.
Mm-hmm.
Great series. The Mutant League Hockey. Have you ever played that?
Yeah, same idea. Yeah.
That's the whole series.
Yeah.
The 2 games. It really struck like it's such a cool idea.
Mm-hmm.
It seems like there should be more of those games. I guess maybe they just didn't do well. There was also an animated series.
Yeah. I remember watching there was. Yeah, I don't remember how long it went on, but I definitely remember watching it. And my mom being like, "This is not for you."
No, and I remember that especially Mutant League Hockey was it was like you said just a really basic underlying simple hockey game, and then stack all the wackiness and the mutant stuff on top of it. And the only one thing for me with that game that kind of drug it down is that you can win the game if you've successfully killed all the players on the other team. But then it's so much easier to do that than
than like
play
score
hockey.
points.
So then it just devolves into a not very good combat game.
Yeah.
Yeah, that just reminds me of Carmageddon, because that was also an end goal in Carmageddon.
Yeah,
If you
literally
kill
no
all your
one.
opponents, you get an automatic win.
No one raced. Everyone would just turn around as soon as the
Yeah.
match would start. Just start shooting.
One that I keep hoping for every time they put out new NES games on that NES Online. A little deep cut. I'd love to see Base Wars.
Mm-hmm.
Any familiarity there? It's a NES baseball game, except it's set in a future where the league owners realized, why are we paying these players when baseball could just be played by robots?
Yeah.
And so you have different types of robots, like unicycle robots that are very fast. You know, they have one wheel, kind of like the robot from DuckTales. But then you have
I've never played this game, but I've seen this box art maybe a billion times. I have no idea how I never actually ended up playing it.
Tank robots and all this stuff, and it's largely, you know, like a fancy baseball game, or a simple baseball game, but with some like augmentations. And in the season mode, you can upgrade your robots based on their performance. You get money and you can buy stuff for the robots. And then they get into single combat when there's a tag out.
Wow, that's awesome.
If it's not a forced play, that guy's coming into third, but there's no one on second. You've got to defeat him after you've tagged him, or else he gets to the base.
Little bit of. Go ahead.
Yeah, fun game. You go.
A little bit of an interesting note on. I'm reading one of the reviews on it. It says it's nearly impossible to field because the screen scrolls slower than the ball moves. That's a pretty interesting way to do something in a baseball game.
I don't remember that, but
I don't know if it's true or not. That's just what somebody said in a review.
But I'm surprised that didn't stick in my head.
Yeah,
just a terrific concept for a game, and that box art is
iconic. I must have walked by this thing like a trillion. We used to buy a lot of our NES games in pawn shops. That was always the spot my dad would take us. You know, we lived on a military base, and a lot of guys would, you know, sell their whole collection every time they'd move, basically. And I probably walked by this box 100 times, and I was like, wow, this looks so cool. He's shooting the ball, and like he's got tank treads, and I have no idea how I never ended up buying this one and playing it. So, but yeah, this looks pretty.
It's developed by Konami.
Yeah. Huh.
So like maybe this actually holds up. I haven't played it since I was a kid. Sadly, also
cover.
looking at the box,
one of the robots looks like a Subidio player. You guys know what Subidio is?
No, but
Subidio is like a Europe game where you have like footballers and you get like a flip side and you try to pass a ball through it, and it's like the red one that's in the middle.
I thought you meant like a video player, like a VCR.
Oh no! I missed that.
No, I always love these old box arts too. That's another thing you really start to miss when you buy everything digital, right? You just get a fancy logo and nothing else. But no, so I had one more I wanted to mention because Supergiant now is obviously you know, a much beloved indie studio. And I feel like a lot of people went from Bastion to Transistor to Hades, and they ended up skipping one of my favorite. I'm not gonna say it's maybe as good as Hades, but I'm gonna put it right below there, which was Pyre, which is a fantasy basketball game. Is the best way I could describe it. I really enjoyed Pyre, and I haven't seen many people talk about it. Honestly, it just kind of seems like it maybe slipped under the radar, which is weird for a Supergiant game, because it seems like everything they do gets a fair amount of love.
Yeah, they never ported it to the Switch, which is
right.
why I've never caught up with it.
Yeah, and that might be a big part of it. I mean, but I really think that that Pyre needs a little bit more love, and maybe as people are kind of like going through the back catalog after Hades is kind of not just within the gaming sphere, but even outside of it. I mean, people I know who've never played a game before loved Hades, right? Maybe they come back around on Pyre, but Pyre is basically a 3-on-3 basketball game, weirdly, where you're dunking, you know, powerful ritual scroll spells or something into definitely not baskets, but baskets. Yeah, it's got a story on it, obviously, layered on top of it. That's very kind of Hades-like in a way that, you're discovering and unraveling the world as you play. But then the combat, instead of being kind of an action RPG or like maybe I'd say Transistor, maybe he was a little closer to like a puzzler. Bastion, kind of another ARPG. Pyre definitely messes a little bit with the gameplay, and instead goes for kind of like a sport, like we're talking about. But I would definitely put it close to 3-on-3 basketball, which is a pretty damn fun way to resolve fantasy fights.
Speaking of, I've been watching like a lot of 3-on-3 basketball because it's like the Olympic basketball now.
Mm-hmm.
Because it's the only one where they can pretty much ban America because
Yeah.
they got off already.
Yeah, and I think this is a cool one, and I hope it gets maybe a second life somewhere around. It got good reviews. It's not at all like
I think it's on the Switch also now.
Yeah. I guess you could maybe sell it as like maybe a soccer or a hockey game as well, but to me it feels like NBA, like basketball straight up.
Now that I have a gaming PC, which I haven't yet used to play a game that came out later than 1990, this might be maybe that'll finally drive me to catch up on Pyre in the coming months.
Yeah, hopefully.
Because I love all three of the others.
Yeah.
Hades, Bastion, Transistor, just magnificent games.
Yeah, and this one has a very cool like thing where when you load it up, you spend a good 10 seconds looking at the battlefield, and you're like, oh man, there's a lot going on here. This is blowing my mind, and then you start to kind of get into it, you're like, oh, all right, let's see what's going on, So, I do want to wrap it around to one more thing. I asked both of you guys what you were playing now, right? We got Professor Layden. Okay, because I don't think I did mine.
Oh, you know what? I should give me no more than 30 seconds because I should spit out. I should say non-traditional sports games. Punch-Out is great. LittleMac, I'm obliged to say so. And I mean, boxing is a pretty traditional. There's almost no more traditional combat sport.
Yeah, maybe absolutely.
Pro wrestling might be more represented in video games, but I think boxing.
Roman wrestling is the most classic combat sport.
Yeah, that's true. Or ancient Greek Olympic wrestling.
Yeah.
But anyway, great game. It's it's almost like boss fights. The game. You're not playing a simulation of boxing, of course. You're playing a cartoony. It's almost a mix of puzzle.
It's almost a rhythm game, kind of, if you really think about it.
Pattern recognition, figuring out the tricks, and then executing them. So it still has the action. Anyway, great game, great series. I hope they make another one.
I'm sure they will. I don't think Nintendo's going to let that one go. I think it's going to come back around soon.
Yeah. Well, it seems like, especially, Nintendo loves motion controls, and the Joy-Cons are better than the Wiimote and Nunchuck for these purposes. And the motion controls were pretty fun in the Wii Punch-Out. So
yeah.
I hope to see more of that. And then I'll just say, on the NES, never came here, and pardon my pronunciation, but Chiyono Fuji no Uichu is a sumo wrestling game. Little cartoony sumo wrestlers. I played it a lot on an emulator, although without any kind of translation patch, so I don't know what I was working towards besides just winning fight after fight after fight. But it's sumo wrestling. You're just two little guys, and you're trying to get the other guy to the edge and knock him off the edge. A lot of timing and button mashing, and I remember that being one that I poured a lot of time into, and exactly once in hours of playing it, the two guys locked up, and somehow or other, I ripped the other guy's, I can't think of the name of it, but the sumo clothing off.
Oh, no.
And exposed, and because this is not localized, he had little genitalia. And he covers himself up and is filled with shame. And in actual sumo wrestling, apparently, if your thing comes off, you lose, and so you can win by, I don't know how it happened, but by stripping your opponent naked.
because it's called wasabi, mosabi.
Yeah.
And
man.
It's tied in a knot in the back, and they're wearing a kinda genital covering black underwear, which is kind of like a string, pretty much. It's but it doesn't help and happen a lot in sumo because it's seen as a
dishonor
tradition.
Yeah.
Dishonest.
Oh man. That's wild.
Yeah.
I didn't expect to go there. I wanted to talk real quick about a game I'm playing. I think I forgot to go because I'm a bad
Yeah, you
host.
forgot to
You
go.
did.
Yeah.
Merv will be back.
Confirm that.
I wanted to talk a little bit about this because it got me thinking when we were talking about it. But I've been playing The Ascent, and um, I am really enjoying this game. Like just as like it sounds dumb to say sometimes, but it's like a visual feast. Like I really feel like there's something about this game where just looking at it and watching it, it's not doing a good enough job and just to see it in a picture of what's really going on. It is the cyberpunkiest game I've played in a long time. I mean, like down to like the story that's going on, the details of the city, the vibe, the feel. It kind of reminds me of, you remember the Shadowrun reboot a couple years back? Kind of a very similar world, but not as tied to the Shadowrun universe as kind of just a general cyberpunk world. One of the things I love about it is you're always interacting with kind of like non-humanoid characters. Not everybody's a human, and it really helps the story, I think, in a way, because everybody's kind of living down in these slums, basically being indentured servants to various corporations, and how the characters interact with that, I think, is a really cool thing. Um, this thing's basically the best ad I can imagine for Unreal Engine 4 because it looks good. The gameplay is a little bit, I don't know, I'm not going to say bad, but it's a very old school style twin
It's like a
stick
twin
shooter.
stick shooter.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
So depending on your enjoyment of twin stick shooting, for me, I'm comfortable with it. I don't mind picking a cool weapon that I like and slowly, powering it up and leveling it up. And they've got different individual kind of like power ups that you can use and kind of like an ultimate finisher move for each character and things like that. It even lets you design your character, which I thought was a nice little touch. Um, you know, and a lot of the stuff that I feel like Cyberpunk 2077 missed, this game is like, yeah, of course you're going to be able to augment your body on the fly and turn on and off different, things and kind of lose a little bit of your humanity to aim a little bit better and stuff like that. But I'm enjoying it a lot. It gets a little bit chaotic as you play. I've seen a lot of kind of like, 7.6s reviews, which is kind of surprising to me because of what I'm playing. Um, I think I think that had they sold it as maybe like a full $60 release, that'd be make a little more sense. But I think this game has kind of like a, labor of love from I think it's like, 15-person studio. Um, really, 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 really enjoy it. So can't don't want to didn't want to forget giving that game a little bit of shout out because I think it's kind of going to be in the wheelhouse for a lot of people that enjoy the podcast because it ain't often I like indie games. So, when I do like an indie game, I really like to kind of give it a very good um, you know a little bit of a review and hopefully some more people grab onto it. But if you're looking maybe more for an aesthetic or an atmosphere and you want to kind of just lose yourself in a cyberpunk world, I think this is kind of a better fit for that than if you're looking for like crazy chaotic twin stick shooter that's got, super defined combat. This game is more to me about, exploring a world than maybe, you know, just shooting your way through a spot. So give it a shot if you're just kind of looking for, a neon lit world covered in rain with flying cars, that kind of feel. Um, so, am I missing anything else? Because, whoops, if not, we can wrap this one up.
Yeah, I think we've blasted right on through the agenda.
Yeah.
Yeah, I feel good about it. Merv's going to be really excited to come back soon, I know, but you know, keeping him under 2 hours, that's been my goal. So I will just close this out by saying thanks for listening. Visit our website at avocadogamescast.wordpress.com where you can find each episode linked up. Merv's puts a lot of effort in them, so please just if you have a question or if you questioning something we said or not sure, go there because he does a great job there. Um, on iTunes, Google Podcasts, and Spotify, search for Avocado Gamescast and check out the Avocado at the-avocado.org. And that's been it. Thanks again, everybody, for listening. Thanks you guys for coming back. And then I think it maybe Merv will be back for the next one. I don't want to promise anything, but we're going to try to do maybe a little extravaganza and a big old welcome back for him when he comes back. So Thanks again for listening. Have a great day and take care.
Take care.
Take care.